she's Granny Pat, Chit Chat with Granny Pat. I don't know why I don't remember it. There is a couple hints here and there. But I've always called her Mama Pat, and y'all been coming at least maybe 7 years, something
Before
like
the
that.
twins were born.
Yeah, well, the twins were 5 in January, so it was before that. And she got up here the first time during an open mic, just like last night, and they had 8 minutes. And I had a sign like I took. Some of you all may have not remembered this because you're old. And when 1 minute came, I held a sign up 1 minute. And then when she kept on, I stood up. I was over there, and you know, we were actually facing that way because, you know, old people, I didn't want their minds to drift when they were looking outside, so we faced that way. And you know, she's older than me, and I'm respecting my elders, and that after 23 minutes, she was still going. And I took a step, thinking she sees me getting closer, and I took another step, and after 7 hours and 47 minutes, people had come, they had gone, lunch had been served, and supper had been served, and it was getting dark, and Mama Pat was going, and she was like the Energizer Bunny. She was going and going and going, and finally, this is no lie. This part's no lie. I got up. She was still telling her story. I put my arm around her, and she kept on, didn't she?
Yes.
I had my arm, and in all reality, all kidding aside, that 8 minutes turned into 24. And finally, I said, Mama Pat, there's a few other folks that would like to tell stories. And she said, okay, just a minute, I'm almost done. And you know what, I just love her to death. And there's not too many people, if I wore the term cousin, or I call you Mama Pat or something, there's a real good reason, because I love you, I appreciate you, and I pray for you.
Oh.
And I pray for Jan, because she's with Mama Pat all the time. So you know what? You've got a half an hour this morning.
Guess
Her
what?
3-minute story is going to take her a half an hour. So.
Guess what?
What?
8 minutes last night. How many minutes, Jan?
She was right at about 8
know.
minutes.
I was watching.
I was impressed.
And Walt had the chicken.
Yes.
He was crestfallen, Mama Pat. He wanted to squawk the chicken, so you come and talk to us.
You know, a person can talk long enough that I can forget what my story was. And I'm just about to that point.
Use the microphone.
Look closer.
There you go.
She can't hear. She can't hear. The lady on the end.
Okay. All right. Want to start again?
Talk louder.
All right.
Let me raise it up just a little bit, Mama Pat. It may be too low now. Try that.
No, it needs to be up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody ready?
But talk loud. Like you're
Okay.
talk like you're hollering at me, would you?
Good. You raise your hand if you can't hear me. See, I wear hearing aid too. And sometimes they don't work either.
Okay.
Okay. Family reunions. How many family reunions have you been to? How many of you have been to a family reunion? Wow, goodness gracious, y'all need to be up here instead of me. This is the Rowlett family reunion. That's my mother's family. They were having family reunion before I was born, and I'm not telling you how old I am so that you'll know how long ago it was. It was in another century. So, Rowlett, they lived in the Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky vicinity. You know, those 3 states come together right on top of the mountain above Cumberland Gap, Tennessee. Now, first thing I'm going to tell you is this. Everybody always talks about going 3 states. My Uncle Carly lived right on the spot where the 3 states came together. Now this is a fact. I ran into my cousin Agnes at one of these family reunions, and she told me our house sat right on that spot where those 3 states come together. We had breakfast in Kentucky, we slept in Tennessee, and the parlor was in Virginia. Now, how many people do you know that can say something like that all at one time? I don't know where they paid their taxes, but I think back then they didn't have a problem with taxes. So, I'm going to go back to where I can remember the family reunions. And I was probably about 10 years old. We went to Middleborough. Now, some people call it Millborough. The advantage to that is you can eliminate 2 syllables. So, just like Woolenburg, that's Williamsburg, Kentucky, you know, in case you don't know what Woolenburg means. So anyway, my Uncle Paris and his wife Bertha, the sweetest woman we ever met, they lived in Middleborough, and that's usually where we went because everybody lived in that area except my family. We were the biggest family in the Rowlett clan, and if we didn't go to the family reunion, you might as well not have one. So, Uncle Paris lived on the very end of the road called, it was down in England, Worcester Street. It was actually Worcester Avenue. They call it Worcester. You eliminated 2 more syllables there. So, anyway, the first reunion was there, for me. A lot of people came, a lot of people. Little white house had 4 posts along the long front porch, and they had an outhouse out back. They had a big barn out back, and I think they may have had a milk cow out in the field somewhere. And my sister Jesus loved to go to Uncle Paris's house. Can you believe she liked to go out to the outhouse, use the outhouse? Because we had plumbing at our house. So anyway, I've got a photograph of everybody that was at that family reunion, and there were a lot of people. The men were all at one end, women at the other end, and the kids were in the middle, and there was tables long. I don't know where they got folding tables back in those days, but they had them, tablecloths covered, and all the women did the cooking. All the women brought dishes, and Aunt Bertha and my mother were 2 of the best chicken fryers you'd ever see. Now my mother could take a chicken and turn it into more pieces than you ever knew a chicken had. In fact, when she got through, you thought that chicken had 4 legs. So the table was covered with pork roast beef, country ham, anything that would come from a farm. Lots of good vegetables. My mama, she took her fried chicken too. She worked early that morning getting that chicken done. She'd done her green beans the day before. But they all had farms, so you knew you were gonna have good eating and nothing else. So anyway, the men always got to eat first. Respectability, you know, that's what it amounted to, that we had to respect our elders, and men didn't notice that there's a whole big long line behind them gonna have to be fed too. They just pile that food on top of their plate, and I stand back and think they ain't gonna leave any food for us kids. We got through,
They've had
and Daddy had his plate piled high. I think he took one of everything, and right on top of his plate was 2 big, thick slices of Spam. You know what Spam was? Well, I guess a lot of people didn't even know that they had Spam in those days. And my mother would not have put Spam on her kitchen table. But there was Daddy with two big slices of Spam. She just, her eyes just rolled when she saw that. Well, it got to where the reunions were building. Our big family was there. At the time, there was 8 of us kids at home, and part of them had married, had started having their kids, so that added to a few more from my family. Uncle Paris couldn't handle the crowd anymore, and said, we're gonna have to start having reunions somewhere else, once a year. So somebody would volunteer to have it the next year, or what have you. So I'm gonna move up to the next family reunion. It was gonna be at Big Spring Union Baptist Church, which was right in the, right where Virginia and Tennessee came together. That little white church was established in 1856 by my great-grandfather on my daddy's side. Well, it was one of the prettiest places you'd ever want to be. It had the spring coming down out of the hills, and the creek ran right by the church. You looked in that water, you thought you was looking down at diamonds glistening in that water. So while we were there, all of Mama's brothers and sisters, there were 9 of them, they all came with their families. And when we got through, Mama was going to take us to our old home place. But before I get to that, we're getting ready for that family reunion, and Daddy had to take his car down to Morgan Company and get new spark plugs. He had to get the oil changed. Mama's standing on the front porch, and we lived on a street that's about 3 blocks long. It wasn't a through street. The only cars you saw there belonged to the neighbors, so you knew which car went to which house. Mama looks up and she sees this car coming out the road. She'd never seen that car before. Well, who can that be and where are they going? Well, they came on out the road, and would you believe they popped right in front of our house. Stopped the car. The door opened. My daddy got out. She almost fainted. My mama was real good at fainting. She did a lot of it. So, I'm going to tell you this. Remember Dale Robertson, the movie star with Wells Fargo? You can still watch him on TV nowadays. Well, I kind of loved Dale Robertson in those days. Every woman was. Dale Robertson drove a great big shiny black Buick convertible. Back in those days, you had the head ornaments on cars. Some people used to steal them. His head ornament on the car, or his hood ornament, was a Texas Longhorn. You know those horns? That was his hood ornament. Well, he didn't have nothing on my daddy. My daddy had traded his car in for a Town and Country Chrysler convertible with a hood that was a half a block long, and I do not exaggerate when I tell you this. It had enough chrome on the front and the back of that car that would lit up downtown Corbin on Saturday night. White wall tires, clean and pretty as you ever saw. The side door panel, 4 doors. Remember when they had the wood paneling on the door? That was the era. Big thing if you had a car with wood panels on the door. Daddy's car had those wood panels. But the thing that would top Dale Robertson Texas Longhorns on his Buick convertible. My daddy had foghorns. Foghorns this long. Remember the truckers? You're riding down the road and if you were in their way, they went honk, honk. Well, you just pulled over and let them go by because you knew if you didn't, they'd come right on over you. Daddy loved those foghorns. Mama said, this is not a family car. You're a family man. She had to deal with it. We took the Town and Country Chrysler to the family reunion that year, and I knew you'd think was going to be to get all the attention. My daddy, as he pulled up into the parking lot at the church, going honk honk. After that reunion was ended, we went up to Mama's old home place. Now I had never seen it. We'd never seen the home place. 20-some years before Grandpa and Grandma, they had retired from farming. They had 300 acres of farmland, and he sold the farm, so we never saw it. My mother hadn't seen it in 20-some years, and so she hardly recognized the area as we drove through. But this was the first and only time in my life, 1949, that I got to see where my mother was raised. It was one of those big 2-story frame houses with the shake shingles, and it had the dog trot right down the middle. Well, I was just dying to get into the house, but there were renters there. And the ducks and the guineas, and you had all the little animals, the chickens and the roosters were running around in the yard. No, Mom said, we can't ask those people to go in that house. After that, they tore the house down, so that was the only time we were at the old home place. Now I'm going to move on up a few years. By this time, we've had the reunion every year at one place or another, somebody's house. This year, it was going to be in Virginia, Lee County, Virginia. He's familiar with Lee County. We had a lot of relatives around there, and my cousin Curtis, I didn't know who cousin Curtis was until then. We pulled up, he had a great big yard, and the cars were lined up in the yard. He also had a big 18-wheeler sitting out there in that yard. That's what he drove to Florida, filled up his truck, came back and sold his produce. He was a pretty showy type of fella. He liked to show off and proud of everything he had and whatever he did. He had a carport, and all the tables were set up under the carport. All the food was brought there. One big table had the desserts on it. Now, my Aunt Rainey would make the angel food cake, and it had enough icing on it to cover one of the mountains there running down the side of that cake, you know. And it was so sweet that it would have pulled the fillings right out of your teeth. But everybody had to have a piece of angel food cake. Well, my whole family had a habit at every family reunion. They gathered around one table, and they were the first in line to get their plates filled. Got to be embarrassing after a few years when the Eastchip family, that was my family, gathered together and said, let's go first and fill up our plates. Okay, we're eating, and you can't have a dessert table without banana pudding. What's the first thing you're gonna go for when you go for the dessert? The banana pudding. And there was this great big long bowl of banana pudding right on the corner of the table. My sister walks up to that table. She comes back and she whispers, get your banana pudding out of the other end of the dish. Pearlie Wolfenbarger used her own spoon to get her banana pudding. Pearlie Wolfenbarger? How did she get in the Rowlett family? We've never heard of Pearlie Wolfenbarger. Well, my niece's husband said, "Who's Pearlie Wolfenbarger?" I said, "She's that lady right over there with her petticoat hanging 2 inches below her dress." She always has her petticoat hanging 2 inches below her dress at every reunion. I don't know if she ever changes it or not. So anyway, when my oldest sister found out Pearlie Wolfenbarger had gotten her banana pudding with her own spoon, she wasn't touching that banana pudding. This woman was the most particular person I've ever known in my life. We always vowed that when she got to heaven, she was giving us the white glove treatment before she went in. And I think she did. So, that reunion, they said, "Who's gonna have a reunion next year?" "Oh, don't worry about it." Cousin Kurt said, "Cousin Harry said he would have a reunion." "Well, who's Cousin Harry?" "I've never seen Cousin Harry." "Oh, he lives over in Jonesville. He's got this big house. Big house. You know, like the White House. It's a big house, about the same size." Would you believe that if somebody was telling you that? That's where the liars contest was going to be. Yes, and it had them big white columns all the way across the front of that house. I don't believe a word of it. I was with my sister and brother-in-law, and Jan and her brother, they were, I don't remember what age they were, but they were getting up. She remembers the reunion. So anyway, we're getting all the information about Cousin Harry's house, who he was, what he was. And we weren't believing any of it, because his basement would hold 7 cars. And I got to thinking, well, who wants to put 7 cars in a basement? And they had a big swimming pool. Well, nobody in our family was wealthy enough to own a swimming pool. They went down to the creek if they wanted to swim in the water. All right, the next year comes around, and I'm going to Cousin Harry's in Jonesville, Virginia, to the family reunion with my brother-in-law, my sister, and my kids were with me then. Well, my brother-in-law decides that we need to stop somewhere and let's pick up a watermelon and take it to the reunion. That was going to be his contribution to the dinner. We knew this was going to be the biggie because we'd heard enough about Cousin Harry's house. Everybody wanted to go there. So my brother-in-law got the big watermelon. He was pretty proud of it. One of them big long ones, it's called, I think called a Georgia rattlesnake. That's what my mother called them, because that's what they raised on their farm, was Georgia rattlesnake, because it had that green wiggly line down in the middle of it, you know. So my brother-in-law told me that. Watermelon, Cousin Curtis shows up, well, he's already there, and he's got his 18-wheeler sitting over here. Who goes to a family reunion in an 18-wheeler? He did, Cousin Curtis. All right, first thing we noticed when we got there was a bonfire. And on that bonfire was one of those big wash tubs, you know, like you did your laundry in, one of those great old big aluminum, not aluminum, whatever kind of tin it was, wash tub full of corn, ears of corn. This time, probably the first time in my life, I didn't get just 1/3 of a piece of corn. I got the whole ear of corn this time. 125 people there, mind you. That meant you had to have 125 ears of corn. They had spent the whole night before shucking corn, and it was boiling in the big wash tub. Now, how you gonna get 125 ears of corn out of a wash tub, and it's hot and boiling? Any of you remember Bolster pillowcases? Remember the Bolster pillowcases? You had these big feather pillows, everybody had their own big feather pillows, went all the way across the bed. You know, the bed then was 57 inches across, we know that. That's how long the pillow was, which meant you had to have a pillowcase to cover that. That was called a bolster pillowcase, this long. It was filled with corn, ducked down into that water, and whenever the corn was done, you got the end of that pillowcase, that hold of it good, and you pulled it up and dumped it into an empty wash tub. Simple as that. Keep that in mind when you go to a family reunion and you have to empty a wash tub full of corn. Okay, let's see. We noticed Cousin Curtis walking over to his big truck. My brother-in-law's still standing there holding that big Georgia rattlesnake watermelon. Curtis, I believe the back of the truck had the doors that went up then, and he rolled that up. A truckload of watermelons and cantaloupes were in that 18-wheeler. My brother-in-law's face just sunk. So that was one of the reunions I remember. I went to most of them. My mother went to all of them because that's the only time she got to see her brothers and sisters. And my Aunt really came to the one, and she had to come all the way from Oklahoma. These people didn't drive cars then. Of course, my daddy had the nicest car, as you well know now. And everybody waited to see what kind of car we were going to pull up in. 2 months after we got that beautiful Town and Country Chrysler convertible, Daddy traded it in for a Hudson Commodore. You know what a Hudson Commodore looked like? Well, it was almost as long as this room, and I don't exaggerate when I say that. And it was turquoise. There wasn't even a word called turquoise back in those days until my daddy got his turquoise Commodore Hudson. That was the 1950 Hudson, and we kept that car about 30 years. All right, let's see, we go right on. Those are the highlights of some of the reunions. We had them at Cumberland National Park there at Cumberland Gap. We had them at the clinic. We had them at Holiday Inn, hotel in Middleborough. And so time passes. My mother now is in nursing home. She entered the nursing home when she was 99 years old. Better mind than I've got now, because she didn't forget anything. I forget most of what I'm going in the next room for. So, a year later, Mama's going to celebrate her 100th birthday. I said, we're giving her a party. By then, her generation had died out. All of her sisters and brothers, all of her in-laws, all of her cousins in that long line of Rowletts were gone. My mother was the last one. She was going to have 100th birthday, and she had become the matriarch of the Rowlett family reunion. When they came to a reunion, first person they looked for was Mama. So I asked the nursing home, can I give my mother a birthday party? Yes. Oh, they liked that, because some of the residents of the nursing home that were ambulatory, they could come to the party too, and they really, you wouldn't believe how excited they were to be at a birthday party at the nursing home. And so we got together, I got the cake, I got the punch, I got everything, 100 balloons, we had to have 100 balloons, and we sent out all the invitations. Well, the day of the birthday party, the lady that was sharing the room with my mother, her daughter was a Mary Kay Cosmetics representative. And she said, Lizzie, my mother was Elizabeth, she said, Lizzie, I'll do your hair and I'll do your makeup for you, for your birthday. She says, I don't know why you girls going to all this trouble. There ain't gonna be nobody at my birthday party. Everybody I ever know's dead. Oh, don't you worry about that. Well, she gets out her mascara and my mother said, are you gonna make me look like Tammy Faye Baker? Well, it was one thing for certain. My mother still had her sense of humor. So, I had given her this beautiful pink robe. She was looking pretty nice. She had pretty hair. And my sister wheeled her into the dining room. She knew everybody there. Even Elsie, the neighborhood grocery lady that I've known all my life, little country store. Elsie was there too, and she had snow white hair, and we had traded with her for years and years. All the neighbors were there. Cousins from Georgia, Tennessee, West Virginia, wherever. And I forgot to tell you about my cousin Harry. We found out what he did for a living. He was a federal judge of Virginia. And he was somebody. We weren't believing a thing they told us about him, but we did after we found out what an important job he had. So anyway, back to the nursing home. 100 people were at my mother's 100th birthday party. Now, she died a year and a half later. And when she died, the Rowlett family reunion died.
Yep.
That was the last Rowlett family reunion. That's my family reunion story.
Mom, Pat, you know how you done good?
I made her cry.
Made her cry. You know, that's the way you tell things. It's like, you know, she cried.
She's good at it.
You might ought to get a couple extra napkins.